Hi, so I'm doing the quiz 5-1 for Comp 202. So there's two parts to this quiz. The first part is we have to make a selection sort and test it with a random array. And then the second one is we want to search for a number I inside the array, and if it is in the array, then say the position. If not, we have to put a -1. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an array of random numbers. We're going to call it array. So this is going to equal to 3, 1, 1, 6, 7, 4, 99, 5, 0, 546, and 9. So here we have a bunch of different numbers inside our array that are not in order, so that way we can ensure that the selection sort is ordering the numbers inside the array. So first we're just going to create a loop to print the unsorted array. So we're going to start. So we're going to use array.length instead of saying that there are 10 less than 10. That way we could change the code and put an array with n amount of integers. So we're going to print here. And we're going to print a space, so there's a space in between each number of the array. Oh, we're not going to print lines. So this way it's going to be all on one line. So let's just test that that worked. So we have our array, a random array. So the next part is we want to create a method that's going to sort the array. So the first thing we're going to do is create our method that does the selection sort. So public static void. So we're going to call this sort array. And we're going to bring in the integer array. So now we're going to do our selection sort. So the first thing is we have to create a nested loop. We're going to do int So now inside this loop, we're going to have the other loop. This loop tests and checks for at position. Okay, I'll just type it first. So we're using j+1, so this way we could start the array at position 0 and then check the first element of the array and compare it, the second element of the array, and compare it to the first element, and so on and so forth. So then we're going to compare it to, again, array.length, so we could change the array and it will work no matter what. So now here is where we're going to sort the array. So we're going to see if array at position j, so that's at position 0, for example, is greater than array at position I. This has to go in bracket. So we're seeing if the position, for example, we'll look at the first one. If the array at position 0 is greater than position I, we're going to execute this part of the loop. So this part of the loop is just going to swap them. So we're going to create a new integer, a variable called minimum. So this is going to be the smallest number, and we're going to make that, for example, array at position 1 to be this. So now we have put the number of position in position 1, for example, into our minimum. So we're just creating a simple swap here. And now we're going to put the position, the array at position j, for example, the array at position 0, now into our position 1. So we've swapped them, and now we're going to put array at position j to be the minimum. So here it's just a simple swap. So now to see that that's worked, we're going to go back to our Make sure there's enough brackets. 2. Okay, so we have all our brackets. So now we're going to go back to our main method, and we're gonna call this loop. Call this method. So I want to call it while I'm printing. So first I'm just going to print, because I'm just going to print a line, just so that we have everything on a different line system. So now I'm going to call, so now I want to call the array, and then I want to print everything. So what happens, so I'm going to go to sort array, and I'm going to send my array to get sorted. Then after this, it's going to return the array. The reason I used void is because it just changes the positions of the array, and as of now, we're going to have a sorted array. So now I could print the array. So I'm going to use another nested loop. So I'll just copy paste this. So it's an identical loop. So now let's check. So here now we have a sorted array. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to search for a number and see if that number is inside our sorted array using a binary search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another method, and we're going to call that method binary search. I'm going to change this here. It's going to be, we want to return an integer, because we either want to return the position or we want to return -1. So I'm going to call this search. And here we're going to import the array also. So now, because I want to have the user test a number and see if that number is inside the array, I'm going to use a scanner. So before I do that, I'm going to import my scanner into Java at the top here. So let's import Java. So now I have my scanner. So inside here, I could scan. So this is going to be where I'm going to insert the number to search for. So here we're going to print, we're going to say input the number to search for. And then I'm going to create my scanner, so I'm going to do scanner search. So I'm going to call the input number. So now we have our scanner inputting the number. So now there's a couple things we have to input. For a binary search, what it does is, it's going to go, a binary search splits the array in half, and then checks, is my number on top of the midpoint? And if it is, then we're going to return that number. If not, we're going to check if in the assorted array, if that number is greater than the midpoint or less than the midpoint. And then after that, we're going to keep redoing this until either we don't see the number or the number that we're looking for is the midpoint. So we're going to have to create some variables here. So the first one, we're going to create the end. So the end, we're going to call this the end of the array. So this is going to be the last position of the array, so -1. Then I'm going to create the start. So this is going to be position 0. Then we're going to create the midpoint. So we're going to call it mid. So this is equal to the end point plus the start point divided by 2. And so now we have all our variables. So now we're going to create our loop. So we're going to do a while loop. So we're going to say while start less than equal to end. So this is going to have our loop always running. Now the first thing we're going to re-initialize the midpoint. So we're going to say we always want to recalculate the midpoint at the start of each loop. So now we're going to say if the number that we put is less than the value of the array at the midpoint. So now originally Java knows that our midpoint is what we calculated out here. So it would be position 5. So if it is less than the array, so if the number we find is smaller than the midpoint, then what we're going to do is we're going to change the endpoint to be equal to the midpoint minus 1. So we know it's not the midpoint, so we're going to shift over 1 and create the endpoint 1 below the midpoint. So then now we're going to say else if. So we're going to say if the number is greater than array at position midpoint, then we're going to change the start point. So we're going to change start now is going to be equal to mid plus 1. So we're going to move over 1. Got my semicolon. So now we're going to take the midpoint and add 1 to it. And now we're going to have another else if. I don't know why this is doing this. So now we're going to say if the number is equal to the array. So this is the ideal situation. Now if it's equal, then we're going to return the value of the midpoint. So we're going to return midpoint. So for example, if we find it right away, it's going to return the value 5 because that's the midpoint of the midpoint is 4, and then so it's going to return 4. And then we're going to close this. So we're going to close this. I think there should be one more. Okay, we'll find out eventually. Yeah, I think I have one too many. So now, if none of this is the case, so if we don't find the number, so if start now is equal to end, and we never is less, we're going to return number -1. So I'm going to say that this number is not inside the array. So now we're going to have to. Okay, so now we're going to have to go back. I'm scared. Oh, oops. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go back to our main method, and now we're going to, we're going to print another line. So this way we could, we're going to print another line before we call our binary search method. So that way everything's going to appear on another line. So now what I want to do is I'm going to call the binary search method inside my print, and I'm going to send it array, and now it's going to send back. Our answer is either going to return -1 or it's going to return the position in the array. So I copy pasted. So I just screwed up with my brackets here. So we're going to return -1. So now everything should work. So now we're going to run it. So here we have our unsorted array and our sorted array, and now I'm going to search for number 3. So see, number 3 is at position 2 because we start counting at 0. So 0, 1, so 3 is at position 2. Let's search for another number. We'll search for 99. So that's correct, 99 is at position 8, and now I'll search for a number that is not inside the array. So I'll search for number 70. Now it's returning -1 because that number is not found in the array. The end.